Hey guys, welcome back to Sock Talk. Alright, I can't do this the whole time. Welcome back to Sock Talk. End of week 8, start of week 9. Big trade deadline today. We are going to do something a little different. The video will be in the same order, but we're going to record the news last so that we can get most, if not all, the trades that happen in the NFL. So if you're going through power rankings and matchup previews and you hear us say something that maybe doesn't add up because of a trade, refer back to the news segment, which will still be in the same order. Anything to add, Adam?
I'm a Penguin.
All right, let's get right into the news.
Hello, and here we are with the news. Filming this after the deadline is passed. It's officially 4:09. So if anything happens like now, we'll inform you. If it happens later, get it next week or whatever. But we'll talk about injuries first, I guess. Your big tight end, Irv Smith.
Yeah.
He's out like 8 to 10 weeks with a high ankle.
So that's pretty much the season for me.
Yeah, really disappointing. Going to be interesting knowing that they did do a trade, kind of what his future is going to look like, if anything. Mark Andrews, banged up again, left early. He's kind of like day-to-day, week-to-week. They said he avoided major injury, but it'll be interesting to see if he gets going this week.
Yeah, definitely good if, I've seen a tight end. If Mark Andrews wants to be nice and healthy on Tuesday, I would be fine starting Isaiah Likely this week instead of Taysom Hill.
True. That could be not a bad option. Ja'Marr Chase, I think, was the big one. He got hurt, but then went back into the game, and we're all kind of like,
okay,
he's fine. But apparently he had a hairline fracture in his hip, but I guess that's not too bad, and he might only miss 4-ish weeks with that. And then he also tore his labrum, which will probably require surgery in the off season. But he's probably going to, a lot of receivers you see kind of play through that, kind of limits the mobility, and talks about, I think I talked about this a little bit earlier too, limits the mobility, kind of have to see how he could play through the pain. I've heard anything on this. They're not putting him on IR. I heard people saying he might miss most of the season. It's kind of up in the air. I'm guessing 4 to 6-ish weeks, but he could be back next week for all I know.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, and it just seems like one of those where I heard that he could be back in 2 weeks, could miss the rest of the season. I'm not sure.
Your guy Debo, the hamstring injury.
Has the team been hit harder with injuries more than the War Eagles? And the answer is yes, the Gladiators.
Or my team the past 2 years.
Fuck you.
But, yeah, hamstrings are tricky. As we saw with Keenan Allen this year, it's hamstring, and it's oh, he should be good, but really easy to re-aggravate. You really got to take enough time. It didn't seem like a bad hamstring strain, which is positive, but if re-aggravates it during the week, could miss more time. And we kind of saw with McCaffrey there, kind of taking that Debo role. Will he get it back? What will his role be in that offense when they're both at full health?
Yeah, the first thing is, luckily, San Francisco has a bye this week, so it's not like he's going to miss game time. Also, with the McCaffrey, I feel like McCaffrey got such an expanded role in the San Francisco offense last game because of Debo not being there. I feel like if they're both healthy on the field, they're going to eat into each other. So if there's a game that McCaffrey misses, Debo will do better, but if there's a game that Debo misses, McCaffrey will do better, as we saw.
Yeah. How much did McCaffrey actually? He had
41 points.
Yeah, I know he had a lot of points, but my phone isn't loading. So we'll just go to the next one. Bateman, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with a foot injury. Cherry just traded for him, and then he got 0 points and is out a decent a bit. So unlucky for Cherry.
Yeah.
Or lucky for Cherry.
It really boosts the value of Mark Andrews or other smaller receivers, or smaller receivers lower in the depth chart for the Ravens. Passing attack has really gone through a lot of tight ends this year, so look for Andrews, likely Oliver to get more involved.
Yeah. And then it seems like McCaffrey had 18 carries and then 8 catches. So definitely did get a lot of volume. Could definitely see Debo eating into that. It'll be interesting to see how they all kind of eat into each other when they're all healthy.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting.
Lazard hurt his shoulder. He missed last week. Seems like he's just day to day coming in now.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Packers didn't trade for anybody, so.
Yeah, still the wide receiver one there. And then Cooper Kupp, he's expected to play, but it is monitoring that he had an ankle sprain last week. Who knows if he'll miss any practice time or if he'll be on more of like a snap count or if he's just going to be good to go. Seems like he'll be good to go.
I'm almost interested in whether they're going to do the same thing that the Colts did with Taylor. Like, say that he's going to be good to go all week, make him game plan for it, and then say, oh, never mind, he can't go. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it did happen late, and I guess he was walking around after, so, for an ankle sprain, that's usually a good sign. Wasn't on crutches or anything, so even if he does miss time, it's probably only, a week or two.
Yeah.
Trades. The first one happened a little bit ago. That was Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs.
Yeah, suddenly he's healthy. So, Bobby, as a Giants fan, any thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. He's going to be good, and then I'm going to cry.
I'm sorry, brother. Yeah. I mean, it's another weapon for Mahomes.
I still don't think Toney's that good. I didn't really like him as a prospect coming out. Thought he was way overdrafted. He had, a good game in the NFL, and then other than that, has still missed time with injury, and his kind of dedication's been questioned. We'll see if he just needed a new scenery, a new team. Obviously, he'll probably have a few big weeks with Mahomes. Just that's what happens when you play with Mahomes. I don't think he'll be a stud, but I could definitely see him having some good weeks. Next trade was T.J. Hawkinson to the Vikings. That was after kind of find out that Irv Smith is going to miss most of the season. Got Hawkinson to replace it.
It's a pretty solid move. I think that Hawkinson will immediately have a big role in that offense. Or maybe not directly immediately, but next week. It depends how much he learns the playbook this week and how much he'll see Sunday.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's also a pretty solid blocking tight end, so that'll kind of help Dalvin Cook and Madison in the run game. And it also seems that Irv Smith was getting a decent amount of targets, 4 to 6-ish it felt like each week. So if those go to Hawkinson, which I think we're assuming, obviously still Jefferson's the number one guy there, but then Hawkinson and Thielen kind of fighting for those other targets and stuff. Doesn't seem like he'll be a top 5 option, but probably a lower tight end one, maybe getting 8 to 10 points a week, where with the Lions he was getting 3 points or 50 once, and mostly 3 points. Next up, Claypool to the Bears. Obviously the Bears needed a receiver. They went out and got Chase Claypool. He's a big, fast, pretty athletic guy. Not the best route runner by any means, but I mean, he's going to basically walk in and be the second best receiver there behind Mooney. So if the Bears start passing more, feel more confident with kind of Fields, I could see him definitely carving out a role there, maybe bigger than the one he had in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. It was kind of confusing for me at an NFL standpoint. For fantasy, I think Claypool does get a slight boost in value. I guess it makes sense. Maybe it even helps out Mooney if they have another guy where it's hey, this guy's not Dante Pettis or Equanimeous St. Brown, so we should try to cover him.
Yeah. Then the next big trade, obviously, Chase Edmonds got sent to the Broncos.
The big piece in that trade, Chase Edmonds.
He was the biggest piece in that trade.
Definitely don't fact check that. Interesting. Mike Boone on the IR. Denver could use some running back help.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't seem like Edmonds was really a great scheme fit for the Dolphins.
He's kind of a receiving back.
Yeah, and just it with the next trade we're going to talk about with Jeff Wilson to the Dolphins, they kind of wanted those same 49er running backs. They got Mostert. They went out and got Jeff Wilson, so they're kind of have the same room that McDaniels had at
San Francisco.
San Francisco. I don't think Edmonds is just going to be good now. Still probably like Latavius Murray, Melvin Gordon getting a ton of the work. I think he could possibly carve out like a receiving role and maybe help out that like struggling offense with just some underneath checkdowns with like Russ being able to dump it off. But yeah, ideal world for me owning him is he becomes a viable flex option for like a bye week or something. I don't think I'll ever really be in the position of starting him, or
And
hopefully not.
and speaking of guys you own, next one involved one of your guys too.
Well, the next one was actually Calvin Ridley
Oh fuck.
to the Jaguars.
All right, there's another one later that involves Adam, but yes,
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley.
And just to finish on the Jeff Wilson one, I think him and Mostert kind of split, kind of like what they did in the past in San Fran. I think it's basically the same thing. I don't think either are going to be like lead guy there, but both will probably get decent amount of work in. But then yeah, Calvin Ridley got traded to the Jaguars. Obviously won't affect this year, but next year I think it gives a lot of teams have talking about giving those young QBs their like stud receivers, and how it like turns out. You gave Josh Allen Diggs, you give like a QB their stud receiver. A lot of times they take a big step. Is this the stud receiver that Lawrence gets that kind of helps kind of like bolster him and make him look a lot better?
I mean, insert gambling joke here.
Yeah. I think really he'll probably be decent next year. It will be risky. We haven't seen him in like 2 years, if not more. How will he be game ready? But interesting to see him paired up with like Christian Kirk next year. And then the last one, we got Naeem Hines to Buffalo. My guy, Zach Moss, going back to Indy. I definitely think Zach Moss takes over the Jonathan Taylor role in the offense.
Yeah, and Devin Singletary is definitely not at all similar to Naheem Hines' play style, so I'm not worried one little bit there.
Yeah, I think really Moss is not going to beat anything there unless whatever Taylor gets
Goes down
hurt.
again.
But like, I don't even then. I'm not expecting much from Zach Moss. Hines to Buffalo. They've always kind of been looking for that like true receiving back. They tried to get J.D. McKissick, who's basically just a route wide receiver over there, and then that failed. They tried to draft James Cook, and that hasn't really turned out into much. It's kind of tough to say. I still think Singletary probably gets the head of the workload there. Probably most of the rushing attempts. Hines might be more like the 2-minute drill, catching some of those checkdowns and kind of like a pass catching down. But yeah, that there was no trades in the week.
No trades in our league. Last thing I wanted to comment on, it appears that Brandon Cooks was not happy he was not traded. So that could be interesting. And does he now sit out? Does he?
And probably goes back out there, but I assume he's getting kind of older. It was rumored to some of these teams probably wanted to get go to a team with a shot of winning. Same thing there. It was also kind of surprising. Seemed like it was almost like set in stone that Hunt was going to get moved. Even like at the end of last game, it seemed like it was like, oh, he's playing his last game here for the Browns. Apparently they wanted a fourth. Couldn't get that. So I guess he staying there helps, kind of hurts the Chubb stuff. Jamal Williams was rumored a lot. Obviously Cooks was rumored a lot. Eagles were rumored to get a running back a lot, so that definitely helps Miles Sanders. Judy wasn't moved. He's been playing well these last few weeks, so it seems like that's probably a solid for him. And then the Giants didn't go out and get a receiver, so I don't know. It was a pretty
Seeing a lot of Packers fans angry on my timeline right now.
Yeah, that they didn't go get anyone. They're not done yet. A ninth. Oh, that's a cornerback to the Falcons.
Rashad Fenton from
Atlanta.
Yeah.
or to the Chiefs.
To the Chiefs.
The Chiefs have traded him to the Falcons.
To the-
That's not fantasy relevant.
So we don't
We'll
care.
see if anything else pops off in the next few minutes. Probably won't even talk about it, but interesting trade deadline. I think this was one of the more exciting ones we've had in the past few years.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And
Let's head right over to power rankings.
welcome back to the Power Rankings. That was a great news segment we just filmed.
Definitely. A lot of news.
A lot of news.
A lot of news.
Number 12, we have Matt. Matt is 2-6. He had a good week for Matt standards.
Did he break 70?
He broke 80.
He broke 80. Wow.
81. Looking good. Tyler Algier was kind of his big guy. Same with Khalil Herbert, who's probably one of his best assets. Herbert's looked pretty good through this whole year, but he's bad. That's it.
Yeah, let's move on.
Number 11, still got Cherry, 2-6. He did have a really good week this week, but I think his team's going to kind of be hurting going forward. Rashad Bateman going to be missing a few weeks. Walker's look good. I think Gibson's also gotten a little bit better with Brian Robinson eating a lot of those like pointless carries. They're kind of getting Gibson more open in space. But I don't think Tyler Conklin's gonna score 26 ever again. And just I don't know. There's also a little bit of hope for like Rachaad White, who I think got involved a little bit more, had a few carries, a few catches, and if he can carve out a little bit bigger role out of Leonard Fournette's like chunk that he normally gets, I don't know. The team isn't good, but he could definitely win games. He scored 145 last week.
Yeah, that's why I actually had me at 11 and Cherry at 10, because I'm like, hey, despite the fact that neither of us are good, his team did put up 140, which I'll reward.
Yeah, I do have you at 10 at 2-6. I think you've been overall these past like 3-4 weeks a lot more like consistent than Cherry. Cherry had the much bigger like boom week, but I think you've constantly been breaking like that like 110-ish, 115-ish range, and it's like then if you're just playing someone that has a bad week, could be a win. Not gonna beat like the top teams if they're having good weeks, but could get some wins there. And I think the consistency has just been pretty big for you. This week was not the prettiest. Debo was out with an injury, so got to see what kind of happens there. Are we kind of worried that it kind of looked like McCaffrey just took Debo's role kind of there with like some of those rushing attempts? Obviously he's a running back, and some of that like short underground passing work. I wonder if that will how that's going to kind of work out in the future with them going at it. And then like Rondale Moore had a big play. I think he had like a 50-yard touchdown. Other than that, he had like a solid week, had a few more catches in there. And then the rest of the team just kind of did whatever. No one really like stood out by any means.
Yeah, I mean, Hurts had one of the better weeks for, you could ask for a QB. Like you said, the biggest things I've been consistent, and missing two of my three best players in Breece Hall and Deebo Samuel. I think getting that 110 threshold just really shows improvement, which again is all I can really want this year. I wasn't going to be a miracle playoff team or anything like that, so.
Yeah, but I think those three teams are really like the bottom tier this year. I think those are teams. Cherry's obviously been trying to sell Jamal Williams. Matt's been talking about making some trades, but he doesn't really have much to sell. You've also had some already sold a few pieces, kind of had a few talks of possibly doing more, so we'll see if any of those teams sell up any more assets, and going to be kind of fighting for the bottom. At 9 though, I have Steve. Steve only put up 100 last week. He's 3-5. He was missing his best player, Travis Kelce, which I think was a big part of why he had such a bad week. His replacement tight end, Mo Alley Cox, put up 0. So, I mean, if you look at Kelce's like average, he's probably putting up like 15 to 20 He's averaging 20 this year, so you add 20 points to that, he puts up 120. The week looks a little bit better in that case, so with Kelsey back for the rest of the year, looks good. Cook and Aaron Jones both had pretty big weeks. The new acquisition in Hunter Renfrow had 1 catch for 6 yards. I don't know how great that's going to go ahead for him, but I think still the big issue here is the wide receiver room's a little iffy. Lockett and Thielen were the only 2 guys to really score points out of that receiver room.
Yeah, I had Steve at 8, James at 9, just because I liked, for the future, at least Steve's team a little bit better than James's, or for the immediate future, I should say. Again, the wide receiver core hasn't been great for Steve. Gotta find that consistency, especially if you're in a tight playoff race like it is in this division. You gotta catch up to at least you or Ethan, or even and hold off James too. So we'll see how that plays out down the stretch.
Yeah, I had James at 8 at 4-4. He didn't have a great week, only put up 87. He had to start Daniel Jones this week instead of Mahomes, who is normally his guy. And then I think Daniel Jones probably had his worst week of the year, the week he decided to start him. The receivers, again, it's just so like hit or miss with these young rookie guys. Like the Falcons aren't really throwing, so it's hard for London to get much going. Christian Kirk didn't have a great game against Denver. Romeo Doubs, or Dubes, whatever it is, he had a pretty big week, 4 catches for 62 and a tutty, but that was on his bench. We'll see if Tony has a role in Kansas City now that he's going to be like healthy now that he got healthy. But I don't know. I think this team is kind of built heavily on those running backs, and he has a lot of these guys on the teams that we might have talked about who just got traded or not. Kareem Hunt's been rumored a lot. Brandon Cook's been rumored a lot about getting traded. We'll see if they step into better situations or worse situations.
Yeah. Again, like we always talked about, the young guys being boomer bust. I always like to bring up when Zach had that huge draft class in 2020, I think it was, where it's like for the first like 3 quarters of the season, his team just still looked bad, but then as they got more acclimated, it looked a lot better. And again, another team fighting for that playoff spot. I think he has probably the most or the biggest uphill battle when it comes to trying to make the playoffs in that division at the moment. If you exclude Matt, because we know people are going to make it.
He does have the win over Steve, where Steve is like a win behind. He's tied with Ethan in the standings, just trailing a lot in points scored. I think if we look at rosters, he might be the like long shot, but he does have the win over Steve, so kind of have to see what happens. 7, I have Zach. He's also 3-5, sitting a game out of the playoffs in his division. McCaffrey looked amazing. He hit the cycle of touchdowns with running, passing, and receiving touchdowns. Put up 40 points.
I gotta get that guy on my favorite team one day.
He put up 140 points, and that was with Devontae Adams only scoring 1. So when your best receiver is only putting up 1 point and you're dropping 140, I think this is a big sign of a lot of good to come out of this. Iffy here is like Najee Harris. We sent some tweets, made some jokes about him being Trent Richardson. He might be. He has no juice. He's not gaining yards. We'll see if I don't think they're gonna like cut him out of this offense by any means, but they might use some of these like Jaylen Warrens a little bit more, kind of make it a little bit of a bigger split, like 65-35 compared to the more like 80-20 it has been. We'll see if that happens, but he really did not look efficient at all. But this was the first Kyle Pitts week where we could be like, wow, Kyle Pitts, we understand why you're a good tight end. He put up 19, 5 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. We'll see if that holds. But, I mean, this team's, I think the main issue here is depth. There's really not much of it. A lot of guys hurt on the bench. A lot of guys just, like, sitting out on the bench. Going to have to see how this team manages to get these important wins through these bye weeks that we have coming up.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest battle he has, which we'll look at next in matchup previews, is I don't know if he has a second running back available this week, or I should say one that will score more than 1 point.
Yeah.
So the depth not as strong for Zach as I think I once thought. Looking ahead, another, I wouldn't say uphill battle, but probably a good candidate to miss the playoffs, be that third guy out outside of me and Sherry.
Yeah. It'll definitely probably come down to him versus Evan. Evan does have the game up, and they're basically at the exact same points scored. They both have 1,009. Evan currently has been beat with 1,009.64. Zach's at 1,009.08. This could definitely be a case where at the end of the year, Zach's really looking back, kicking himself that he lost to Matt early in the season, where that could have either been the difference maker, either to tie him up and come down to a points four thing, or give him the win if they finish tied. So Zach really needs some Evan losses and him to have some big wins coming up, but we'll see how that happens. 6, I have Ethan at 4-4. This team has taken a beating these past few weeks. Not just by having the most points scored against in the league with 1,141, the next closest being 1,059. So he's been taking a beating there. He's also missing Alan Lazard, Jamar Chase, Dotson still hurt. Obviously lost Javonte Williams for the whole year. He's losing not just like starters or like depth pieces. He's losing like key guys like those Jamar Chases. It'll be interesting to see when he comes back. I guess they chose not to put him on IR. Kind of came out of nowhere. I've heard anywhere that he could be out for like most of the rest of the season, to be back in like 3-ish weeks. So gonna have to kind of see what he is there. Pretty sure he also tore his labrum. So when he does get back, he's probably gonna be playing back with like limited mobility in that shoulder and possibly some whatever. Probably talked about that in the news now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
the
we
news
probably
that we
did.
The news that
The
we
news
did
that we
film.
definitely did.
But he again chose the wrong quarterback. He chose to sit Rodgers this week, went with Lawrence, and that turned out great for him. At least he has Chubb and ETN. They've both looked great. ETN in this featured role has, I think, put up like almost, if not 20 in both weeks. He's like averaging like 20, and Chubb is obviously Nick Chubb. If Hunt gets moved,
Better
can
for
only
Nick Chubb.
help him.
Yeah. I think there was a joke that was said that like every time Red Zone went to the Browns game, it was just Kareem Hunt in at running back. So maybe we'll go to Red Zone and see Nick Chubb.
Yeah, get vultured on a few less touchdowns. So
Yeah.
it'll
But,
be interesting to see how this guy ends
Yeah,
up.
I think Ethan definitely is the number one candidate to receive the Broken Trophy for most interest at the end of the year.
Yeah, up there for sure.
It's been a rough year, but he's still in it. And if he can pull through this, maybe his team gets healthy right up until the playoffs, and we get another run like last year.
Yeah. At 5, I have Evan. He's 4-4. Last week he had his best week of the year, putting up 167 points. Seemed like everybody on his team was scoring at least one touchdown. The only person that didn't was Curtis Samuel and Devonta Smith. So when 8 out of your 10 guys or whatever are scoring touchdowns, that's usually a pretty good week to have. Waddle went insane, 8 catches for 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hopkins looks crazy good coming back. All those fears of maybe Hopkins is a little old, washed up now, those just look ridiculous. He's still the stud that we've always known. And I think I like this team moving forward. I think he's got the edge up on Zach, and I think he has enough talent to hold that off and possibly get in. Again, got to kind of see. The main issue here is those running backs. Zeke hurt. Melvin Gordon is getting like less carries than Latavius Murray and Miles Sanders. I mean, the Eagles have been rumored to trade for some of these running backs, so we'll see if they do it in the next few hours. If not, Miles Sanders looks pretty good for the rest of the year, but I think running back is the main concern if we look at Evan's team.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that one. Evan's team, I think, looks 10 times better than it did at the start of the year. I think we had a lot of depth and consistency issues in these early weeks this season. Like you said, Hopkins has come back like he never left. And overall, I think this team has what it, or this team can do what's needed to get to the playoffs, which would be the first time in Evans' career, which means that if he was to make the playoffs, everyone would have been in the playoffs at least once. So I think it's an interesting storyline to watch as we get closer to fantasy playoff season.
Yeah, besides Steve.
Well, besides Steve, but team history, they've been there once.
Yeah. 4 at myself. I thought I had a pretty solid week this week. My receivers kind of stunk besides DJ Moore. I think receiver's kind of my weak spot right now, but I thought I had a pretty good week. Everybody kind of contributed, except for Wandale and Cortland Sutton. That's about it.
I actually had you at 3, Trevor at 4, just because your record was better, and I think you're the only 5-3 team.
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, I mean you had a decent week, enough to get a win against me. So congratulations, sir.
Yeah.
Game, good game.
Great game. Number 3, I have Trevor. He's 4-4. He put up 174 last week. Basically, AJ Brown and Derrick Henry almost beat Matt. Just them two. They combined for like 75 or something. Matt put up 81. So that's the kind of week that Trevor had. Pretty good. I really like this team. Have all year. And just having so many of these players that could just go off for 40 basically any week. It's going to be a tough team to beat coming down with the bye weeks and the long stretch of the roads. I know I'm facing him this week, so I'm probably going to lose there.
Really shut us up when we were questioning his trades last week. So we'd like to issue a formal apology to wide receiver you. And please don't hurt Adam too bad.
Yeah. 2, I got Griff. He's 7-1. Kamara put up 42, which is ridiculous. Pollard with Zeke out put up 33. Don't know if he's always going to do that, but I mean, Pollard shows that he has the juice. Andrews is hurt. Going to kind of see what happens there. If not, what's he going to do at tight end? Josh Allen also had his worst week, but his worst week, 17 points. So another really good team.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like unless there was a major collapse, it looks like the Devil Rays are going to win that division.
Yeah, I think he needs 4 more wins, and same with number 1. Jasmus also needs 4 wins to clinch the number 1 seed. Freaking Foreman went off for
3 touchdowns.
30-something points. Yeah, screw you, Jasmus. You're number 1. Congrats.
Good job.
That's it.
That's it. All right, let's head over to matchup previews. All right, we're back with matchup previews. A little recap of last week. James, our guest, which record should be right here.
Oh, and Bobby's here again.
Yeah, and Bobby's here again.
Hoping to do better than last time.
He went 5-1. Bobby went 2-4. It makes sense though. James in the league. Bobby isn't. And also Bobby had maybe 10 seconds to look at each matchup and just say something.
Yeah.
So this time he gave him a little bit more prep time.
And that means 20 seconds.
Yeah, so we gave him 20 this time. Again, we went 3-3, I believe. In our own picks, we both went 3-0. Usually we go 2-1, so this week there's a little change there. That brings my all-time record to 25-22, and Adam's to 29-19. So I need Adam to have a really bad week so I can catch up there. But because we tied, Adam, you get first to pick. Which matchup are you taking?
Going to be looking at the Evan versus Cherry matchup.
Interesting first pick. All right. So that would be the Anteaters versus the Steamrollers. Players I like: Herbert versus Atlanta. Atlanta seemed very porous in the pass defense. Also like Miles Sanders versus Houston and Kenneth Walker versus Arizona. Matchups I don't like: Gibson versus Minnesota. Usually have a pretty good run defense, so definitely probably going to look at Gibson getting more involved in the passing game. Also not a big fan of Conklin versus Buffalo. It's Buffalo. And Evans' wide receiver core, while they are good, they don't have favorable matchups. That being said, it shouldn't affect them too much because they're usually guys that do well regardless of who they're playing.
Yep. my pick, I'm going with Evan.
All right.
If we look at Cherry's receivers, he's starting Sky Moore, who might not even play depending on what Tony does and stuff, and LaVisca Chenault. Evan just way more talent on his team. Cherry's won the last 4 matchups when they've gone head to head. I think Evan breaks the streak, and I think Evan gets the win.
All right. So that means I'm stuck with Cherry. Bobby, who do you think you're going with?
Gonna have to go with the Anteaters, unfortunately, for Cherry. But yeah, Cherry's team kind of sucks.
That's fair. So then I guess you all know which one I'm taking next. It's going to be the Cranberries versus the Bison, or Steve versus Matt. My one note I have for this is who cares about matchups? Matt can't break 90.
That's his 80.
Shut up, nerd. It did say 80, and then I forgot Matt did break 80 this week. So
Oh, okay.
favorable matchups all around and for both teams here. Maybe this is a week Matt not affected by buys that much. Could sneak away. Maybe have a big week. I don't think so. I'm still going to stick with Steve. Adam, who are you thinking?
Well, I guess I got Matt. You know what? If there's a week to back Matt, I guess it's this one. Steve's team will probably win, but who knows? Maybe Algier puts up like 15 again. If Montgomery gets traded or something, maybe Herbert goes off. There's a possibility, I guess.
All right, I guess we'll have to see. Bobby, who are you thinking?
Love Cape Cod here, and I love cranberries, so I'm gonna go with them.
All right, yeah, that's pretty fair. Adam, what matchup are you picking next?
I am going with myself versus Trevor next.
You have a lot of buys in this one. I didn't make a note of that. Another one where there's a lot of favorable matchups for both teams. That being said, the favorable matchups for Trevor are with like better players and not Ben Skowronek.
Yeah.
So the only people I really don't like is Brian Robinson versus Minnesota, like I just talked about, pretty good run defense, and Jonathan Taylor versus New England, because New England's had a pretty stable run defense. So, who are you picking to win?
I'm going to pick Trevor. I'm starting Olamide, Zacchaeus,
Olamide Zacchaeus.
Ben Skowronek. It's probably not going to be good for me. Trevor's beat me. He's gone head-to-head 5 times. He's 3-2 against me. I think he gets another win here. I don't love my team this week.
Yeah.
I'm loving favorites so far. I'm gonna have to go with Trevor here.
You know, if there's one week to support the Dragons, it's any other week. It's not looking great.
But you got my back, man.
I got your back, though. Huge Dragon fans this week. So that leaves my matchup. I'm looking at what we have left. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the War Eagles versus what would Jones Drew, or because we have Bobby here, what would Jesus do?
Yes.
Love
God.
Biggest question, does Zach have an RB2 for this matchup? Right now, McCaffrey and Najee are on buys, and JT's back, so Deion Jackson probably not going to be a huge role. Does Elijah Moore get traded? We don't know. Players I like, Montgomery versus Miami. Miami's run defense has not been great at all. I do like Devontae Adams versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville probably has a huge bounce back after a dud last week. And Mixon versus Carolina. Carolina's pass defense is really good. Run defense, not so much. And people with unfavorable matchups, a lot on my team. That being said, go War Eagles.
So I guess I'm stuck with Zach. If we look at the history, you are 6-0 against him with the 3rd best point differential in the league with positive 248.6 points in your matchups against him. So Zach's looking for his first win ever against you. And I guess I'm going to back him this week. I think he might throw in like Hunter Henry in the other flex position. The RB2 spot, he does have 2 firsts. He could possibly go out there. I think he has a third too, so maybe get like a cheaper option, go for like one of those veteran cloggers that'll just kind of like give a third for Lat Murray, get him 6 points. Something like that. Might give a first, try to go get a better talent that'll like have longer staying power with this team. I think he could do that. Even if so, I think it'll be a close matchup. He obviously has the better players. He just has fewer players. So I think Zach could definitely get the win, but I think this will be really close.
I'm also going to go with Zach here,
You motherfucker.
especially that flex spot. I see Elijah Moore as an option. He likes to play a lot of football for the Jets. I have him minimum of 30 points this week, so I think he's got this one.
Well, Bobby,
Sorry,
sadly, you won't be back. But it was nice. Well, nice the 2 episodes we had you for. Adam, which one are you taking next?
I'm going to go with... these last 2 I think are pretty tough.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with... I'll go with the James Ethan.
All right, so Crusade versus the Gladiators. Big point of focus here. Chubb and Amari Cooper are on bye this week. I like Mahomes versus Tennessee and Dobbs versus Detroit, but also all of Ethan's wide receivers that he's starting have a favorable matchup there. James' RBs, on the other hand, do not really have favorable matchups. Maybe one has an okay matchup, but not much. I don't like Cooks versus Philadelphia, and what is originally Hawk versus Green Bay might be Hawk versus somebody else, because Hawk was traded, as we discussed in the news segment that we've definitely recorded.
Yeah, I think he could also... I'm gonna pick Ethan for this one. I'm gonna take the underdog. If we look at the all-time head-to-head, James is 1-2 versus Ethan, but he does have a big blowout win, so he is positive in the point differential
I
there.
didn't realize that we finished that.
Yeah, I've been spending multiple hours on this each day.
Thank you.
And then, so, yeah, the history, I'm going to give Ethan his 3rd win. I think ETN probably has a big week. I like the Olave matchup. I think if Lazard plays, that's big. Also, he could pivot off of Hawk to Higbee if Higbee plays, and I don't think that's a bad option. He's been targeted a lot this year, and just the inconsistency we've seen from James makes me worry. But if there's anything we know about Ethan, it's James will probably put up 150 this week, and Ethan will lose.
Yeah, I'm fine having James this week.
Mhm.
Like you said, teams usually go off against Ethan. Also, I gotta, Ethan's hurt and has buys, so I'm fine with James here. Bobby, what are we thinking?
This one's a little tough for me. I'm worried about Hawk being a little bit limited this week, but I'm liking the matchups over on Ethan's side a little bit more. That's great.
Wow.
I'm gonna go with Ethan. Also going for the underdog. This could be bad though. We'll see.
Yeah, so Ime Okuda to the Nets. That's what we just were looking at. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that leaves the last matchup. Is undisputably the matchup of the week. 1 versus 2. Middletown Minutemen versus the Devil Rays.
I got Joey.
All right. I do like Kamara and Jay Jetta in their matchups, but I also like Kupp and Jacobs in theirs. Not a big fan of Garrett Wilson versus Buffalo. Mark Andrews seemed a little banged up, as we talked about in news, which we definitely have recorded by now. Also not a big fan of Clyde versus Tennessee, and Hill doesn't have a great matchup against Chicago, but we'll see. They're shedding defensive pieces like nothing over there. I will be taking... You got to ride the hot hand. I will be taking Jasmus for this one.
All right, I guess I've got Griff. If we look at their head-to-head, Griff won the first 4 matchups. Jasmus has won the last 2.
including a playoff.
including the playoff game where Griff picked Jasmus and then Jasmus beat him, and if he picked the other one, he would have won the championship that year.
Yeah.
So a nice rivalry here. Griff has the point differential. He's positive 62.5 points versus Jasmus. And I think Griff can get this win. Jasmus, like I just said, has won the last two, but I think he could turn around. I like Kamara, just had an amazing week. He's got some good matchups. I saw something that Jefferson hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. Think he could find the end zone here. I think the big thing here is, will these star players play? Will Mark Andrews play? I like that a lot more for Griff. If Cooper Kupp plays, because he's questionable too. He got hurt at the end of last game with an ankle sprain. Will he miss time? Unsure. I think this is going to be a really close, high-scoring matchup. I could definitely see Griff winning. And
Yeah, as I said, immediately I'm going to go with Jasmus. I made the mistake of picking against him last time when he was going against Adam. But yeah, I see a lot of good players that are going to score a lot of points.
All right.
Simple as that.
That's going to wrap up matchup previews. Bobby, thank you for joining us.
No
And we hope you
problem.
stick around for fan questions, which comes up right now.
Yeah. What questions do we got?
Like 2. We're back with questions around the league. Because Bobby's here, we're going to have him read it again. Bobby, what do the people want to know?
I got 2 questions right now. We got Steve asking, could Matt have come into my life at a better time when I needed a win?
You know, Matt's a great guy. You should be a part of everyone's life. When it comes to being a part of the fantasy life, you know, maybe it is a good morale booster. Like Adam said, it's very possible that Matt could go off. Is it likely? No. Gets a win there. Maybe pick one up on James. James loses against Ethan.
yeah, after this week, like, he still can't be in the playoff picture because I'll still have 5 wins, and one or Ethan or James is going to win, so they'll be at 5 wins. But he'll be a game behind now instead of, well, he'll still be a game behind. But yeah, I'll pick up a game on either James or Ethan, and then probably on me too if I lose. So yeah, definitely helps the playoff push when you need a win to see Matt on the schedule.
Yeah,
Matt's a man of the people.
he is.
That's all I can say. Don't even know who he is, but that's what I got. Okay, next question. How does Cordero's return affect the Cran for the rest of the year?
This is kind of a tough one because Algier has looked pretty solid the last couple weeks with Patterson out. I'd assume Cordero will still be involved. Don't know if he's going to put up the usual 20 like he was doing weekly, but it's definitely a depth piece that helps the team out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a guy you can immediately plug into the flex, and I trust him over like a Renfro or MVS that he has starting there now. Obviously, I still think the main issue with this team is like the receiver room with like Patterson's a running back, helps the flex, doesn't help the receiver room, but I don't know. Definitely will help his team. So a more reliable option than like a Renfro probably. Because Algiers look good, but I don't think they're gonna fade out Patterson by any means. That's really it, right?
Yeah, I got nothing else.
All right. I have a question or two maybe.
I have to ask you.
No.
Okay.
Do we think Cherry blew it up a year too early? Like, obviously he did gain a ton of assets, but if we look at like who was on Cherry's team last year, is this like a playoff team? And for those listening at home and also right here that don't remember, it's like he would have Kamara, kind of started slow, but has come along these last 2 weeks. Dalvin Cook, who this year is averaging like 15-ish points a game. Keenan Allen, been hurt, missed a lot of time. Debo, who's looked good outlook now, her being hurt, and with McCaffrey a little more questionable, Tyreek, who's just the fantasy wide receiver one, Kelsey, fantasy tight end one. Christian Kirk has a lot bigger role. Melvin Gordon still looks good. Jamal Williams obviously has been a top 15 running back this year. He had Judy, he had Godwin. So it's like, I feel like that team is definitely still competing. Yes, it's the argument of like you want to get out. If we're looking at this team next year, maybe he doesn't get as much as what he got for like a Dalvin Cook or Kamara or Kelsey or even Tyreek. But I mean, how do you think that team stacks up against some of these teams that are here now?
It's a double-edged sword because yes, he could have tried to run it back again, bounce out of the playoffs earlier than a lot of people thought last year. Say, hey, I gotta go get another ring with this core. But he did, like you said, probably capitalize on the value of all those guys. He did get more future assets, looking like he's gonna be in this for a couple years, but not exactly like a Matt rebuild where he's gonna be bad for like 5 or 6 years. So I think it's hard to tell. Again, if the goal was to win again, or if he wanted to win again, he probably could have. But it's also good to capitalize on the value of his guys. I forgot how to speak today.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he went 12-2. Obviously, like the playoffs are just who really knows what's going to happen. You could just have a bad week. Someone could have a good week and win. But I think if we look at this team, you have to think then like Jasmus also doesn't have Tyreek, so does he go out and get another receiver? Jasmus team's not as good, and it's Griff doesn't have Kamara, who's like a top team in this league now. I think if he keeps this core together, he might be looked at as the best team again, and it might have been a year too early. I guess it's better to be like too early than too late, but I think when you kind of have this opportunity to win a championship, I think it's hard to just blow it up. I still think this can work out for him. Obviously, he has a ton of firsts coming up in these next few years, but I just don't know if that time was to completely tear it down. If he could have maybe pivoted from Kamara to I don't know, or like the trade he kind of did with you where he got rid of Debo, but then got like a Kenneth Walker, got younger, but then he still has these other like really talented players, so you get a little bit younger at some positions, kind of like his getting like a Bateman or something. Maybe you give away Debo and Kamara, but you end up with like Bateman, Kenneth Walker, and then some picks, and it's like you're still really competitive. I just don't know if he did it a year too early. We've seen this kind of before with Zach too. When Zach blew it up, if you looked at next year, it was like he sold Dalvin Cook and Fournette, and then both of them were like top 5 running backs the next year. It's like, I wonder if he has these guys. Is he in the playoffs? So I think that's one thing. Then we also see teams that wait too late to blow it up. So I guess that's the fear on the other end where your players lose all their value and you don't sell for enough. But I guess unless you have anything,
I don't think so.
I guess that's all the questions we have. See you next week. And news that we're going to film right now.
No, we already did that.
You already did that.
We already did that.
Yeah.